Oh.
How are we doing?
I'm working on the camera angle. It wants to stay towards the curtain,
Hmm.
but
Does everyone see me?
Yes. Yes.
oh, you can
Oh,
see.
you can see
Okay,
me?
good.
Okay, great. Is everyone on?
I think so.
Okay. Welcome to the 13th Ask the Chief Forum. Okay, we're going to start out as we have been recently with a nice energy bump. Hands approximately 12 inches apart. Feel that energy between your hands, your fingers. Anyone not feeling it, let me know. Okay. Now I am bumping up your energy. You should feel that increase. Anyone not feeling that increase, speak up, let me know. All right. Very good. Okay. So we're going to contain our tech, our space, and the total forum. Seems like there's other things that also yourselves, of course. So starting now, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to push energy throughout our space. Very, very good. Ms. A is ready.
Yes, yes, I'm ready.
We can start with, I guess, as promised, Lucy had a question about water. And Ms. A can read that question again. Well, there's several questions.
Okay, so did you want to start out with the sayings first and then go to water, or just straight up water first?
Actually, let's do sayings first. We'll start with sayings. I'm going to read the first one.
Sure, sure. Okay. Did you want to ask them if they had any questions right off the bat, or just go straight?
Well, we'll do the sayings, and then anyone has any questions, you can ask the questions. This is going to be primarily a muscle testing forum, and a number of the questions don't really apply to muscle testing, but where they do, I'm going to muscle test to get answers. Okay, so I don't know if you want to get on the table. I'm going to go around you.
I was just waiting because when I look at the screen, it just looks black. I can't see us, but I think, can you guys see us?
Yes.
We can see you, Miss A.
Okay,
Great, because
well, more Skype antics.
yeah, Skype antics. Okay.
Okay, for starters, I'm going to do protection for Ms. A. Okay, and I may do a thing where I'm going to see who's got something on them that, and there's someone's who do, so protection, screen. Okay, so with this, I'm going to literally push out whatever's on whoever's got something attached to them still. And okay, I'm going to do a a little search before we get going, so to minimize the interference. Yeah, there we go. More than a few, I see. Okay.
Claiming ownership of a sheet.
Okay. Almost on our sheets. So
Yes.
let's see. Let me find. I want to announce who it is. So you be anonymous. We're going to do a little added exercise. I would like everyone to participate.
No.
Okay. We're going to take the position that we do for containment. What we're going to do. Laugh all you want. We'll laugh in a minute. Okay. If you're standing, if you're able to stand, good. But if you're not, that's okay. It's light containment, but a little more intense. It goes a bit deeper. And you're going to follow me, starting now. Bringing it up. Center. Energy of the center. From the feet. Again. Energy of the center. Again. Of the center. Again. Of the center. And one more. Okay, everyone's helping whoever's struggling with their containment with this exercise.
Check to see if the screen is back to normal.
Okay, so it's going to check the screen, and then we're going to get started.
Not yet, but we'll just wing it.
That's okay, we'll just, okay.
Okay. First question. Thing. Sorry.
Okay, we're saying,
Okay. First saying is opposites attract. Oh, thank you for submitting me your sayings.
a little extra. paying extra attention today.
Yeah, they're afraid.
The opposites attract. A lot of these things you're going to find that they are basically a mind screw. So concepts of opposite attracts is like they want you to confirm the idea that whoever you decide to get involved with romantically and so on, that that person will be primarily almost like a polar opposite of you, even in personality, and wanting you to think that's natural. Like the concept of couples fighting is a natural thing, which isn't. So, one second. There you go. Sorry, folks. Have quite a few intruders this time. So opposites attract. Again, it's literally, if you believe it, therefore that will be your reality, that will be your experience. I don't know anyone who wants to get involved with people who are going to be a problem. But what they're telling you is that this is natural. You should go out, and if someone's it's an issue, someone's got some serious problems, and you can tell that they have some serious problems. Oh, that's natural because opposites do attract. Opposites do not attract. Basically, what you will attract naturally is someone that vibrates in a very similar vibration as yourself. That is natural. So with these guys interfering, but I'll see if there's anything else that I can add to that. But again, I'm just going to muscle test. I'm going to have my associates come in so we can clear these tests out. So somebody's open, like an open door on the forum, and which means whoever it is, you're not doing your containments properly. And during your sessions, we will check again, see if you are doing your containment properly. If you're not, you're causing interference with the forums. Okay? The opposites attract. Nonsense. It's natural to attract those who vibrate similarly to yourself. Okay. Yeah, literally, again, feeding tool density is just to open you up so that you can be fed up. So again, everyone here is old enough to have had relationships except one individual. So anyone who's been in any relationship, more than one on this forum, have experienced individuals who are just a problem to you. And a lot of the times, the problem individual has the most dense energy, and they have this thing about them where they just want to be in your space a lot, and every time they're in your space, they are a problem. You send them on their way, maybe you don't hear from them for a day, or maybe a little bit more. Then who tends to call? Basically them. They try to get back in touch with you. Or you'll find yourself actually corkscrewed by these individuals, and you'll feel this guilt, which is basically a corkscrew. That's primarily to override logic. And then you may call this individual, or they're on your mind, they're corkscrewed you if you are thinking about someone who's been a problem to you. Now, I deal with logic. When people are a problem to me and I feel them coming up, or you see their face in your mind or their name pops up constantly, I know there's a problem. Containment, immediately. Shut off that connection. Your intent is basically to deflect them and push them out of your sphere. I don't know if anyone's had relationships where you're single, and there's a couple different prospects for relationships. You may end up meeting someone who has a really comfortable vibration. And then you'll meet someone who has this really archaic thing. They may be a good-looking person, whatever, but their energy is very archaic. I'm not into the visual thing where, wow, she's pretty, I should get with her. Cute was always good enough for me. Cute, cool energy, mellow, but I did make mistakes myself, until I learned what was going on. So the way things are set up, attachments, things that are running around in the sphere you can't see, somehow it always ended up where the person who matched my energy the closest ended up being either involved with someone else. So I'm not into just trying to break up some situation and interject myself. Or even if that person is single as well, there's always some kind of situation where you end up having to move somewhere for maybe work or something like that, or school or something. And when that happens, you move to wherever you're going, and you try to keep in touch. They inevitably will push in someone who's very dense, and they end up with that person that is more suitable for you. Now, there is again no such thing as the twin flames and soulmates or anything like that. But these individuals, if you're in this realm, you got some issues. But if you're dealing with someone who's also trying to balance themselves, at least you can kind of work through it. And it doesn't guarantee that you will be together for a long period of time. It'll break up, but usually if you break up, it's usually mutual. It has some logic to it. It has to do with either you're moving, in one direction and they're starting to move in another. Okay, so with that said, we're going to go on to the next thing.
Okay. Calm before the storm.
Calm before the storm. That's another mind screw. Again, it's like getting them to condition your mind to believe that there will never ever be just total calm. There's always going to be a storm that's going to rise up. So what you're doing with your mind, they're using your own energetic mind and your own intent. They're hijacking your intent, really, to expect trouble, to expect the storm. So individuals talk about meditation. Again, the concept of meditation is just, I'm just not down with it, because again, it doesn't really explain itself, and it doesn't tell you what you're dealing with when you're out there. So some will try to get calm, but they have these things going through their head. Calm before the storm, what was it, the previous one, so on. And literally, your consciousness is expecting trouble. That's what calm before the storm means. And is that what it means? Yes, that's what it means. So we can just move on. We're going to just start moving on through some of the other ones. That one's, I think I explained that well enough. Yeah, well, again, I think I did, when I was talking about, again, Ms. A was just reminding me, I guess to say it in a different way, that using your intent to create a problem for yourself, because you believe that saying, and that one's been around for a long, long time. I remember hearing that when I was a little kid, the calm before the storm. calm before the storm, and that's a passive mantra. So that people just, they accept it, they just, will just spout these out, and they're just throwing it off the cuff, but they don't realize that they're actually contributing to a negative mantra that will inevitably, I should say, invite trouble. Okay?
All is fair in love and war.
All is fair in love and war, and that's a rich one there. It's literally telling you that if it has to do, the concept of love, usually they're talking about romantic involvement. That anything goes is to get the person that you're interested in. And they don't tell you that literally what you're doing, you're trying to claim someone, and that any underhanded means that you can think of is fair. It's okay to literally, there are people who put, go to someone and put a spell on someone, or love potions and all this other stuff, which is they're basically designed to override someone else's free will. It's a selfish saying, extremely selfish saying. And we're gonna, basically, again, it's a mind screw designed to tell you, oh, it's okay to be a jerk. So there are individuals, and some really crazy ass individuals, who will take that and try to interject themselves, even in a relationship where folks are generally getting along pretty well for that time. But I'm crazy as hell. I want that guy. And that guy's like, she's kind of crazy as hell. I don't want to have anything to do with her, but I want you. I want, and they'll go through all this nonsense, dense magic or whatever, to try to get that person. So those who are unaware of these types of tactics, they'll end up with someone, and the number of times I've had sessions with individuals say, I don't even know why I'm with that person. Every time we get together, it's just madness, Or they'll use the term, I think it's one, I don't know if you would call that amongst the sayings, that you might call it a love-hate relationship. So a love-hate relationship, if you can say that it's a love-hate relationship, that means that somebody in that relationship is using some underhanded tactics to claim the other person. So even the concept of relationship, it basically reflects density. Density wants to feed. Density does not feed off of, can't live on peace and balance.
No.
Anyway, we'll say one does not live on peace and balance alone in the dense realm. There's something else I want to add, but at this point, it seems to be like taking a jog around the track. So I'll come back to that when it comes up, if it applies to the next one. You see anything that I might have missed on this last one?
All I can think of is that yin and yang loves opposites, because they get the most essence out of it.
Well, again, that goes along with that goes along with opposites attract.
Ah, shit.
Okay.
Like, you can only have peace through war, all those opposites.
Like I said, it seems like there's a lot more attention being paid to this particular forum for some reason. Actually, along with that one, come to think of it, I generally with female clients will do this thing where they will settle. And the whole idea of settling has to do with some of these things, having to do with opposites attract and so on and so forth. Where there's a guy who's problematic, but also there's the mantra that you have to have a relationship, you have to have a relationship, and so on and so forth. A lot of women that I find really succumb to that are women who had children through other relationships, and a lot of men who are single who have no kids tend to not be that interested in relationships, in permanent relationships with women who have children. So this is the settling for the woman who has kids. She doesn't focus on her own life, so all she can do is focus on, I don't have a man. And also it's extremely selfish too, because she has maybe 1 or 2 kids, and she's not taking into consideration that this guy may not jive with her kid, to the extent at times where the woman feels ill feelings towards their own children, who are depending on them to basically, grow up with some kind of balance, some semblance of balance in their lives. So that goes along with, again, in other words, not so much opposites attract, but anyway, that goes along with some of the other mantras, and I'll reflect back on that if it comes up. Yeah, this is settling, yeah. Okay. So we're going to move.
We're past, you can only have peace through war.
That one.
There's a lot of people that buy into this one.
Apparently, yeah, okay. So we're going to check. A lot of people buy into this. Why? It's like you're not using your brain if you believe in this crap. You're not using your logical sense in believing in this crap. It means that you've been corkscrewed by the system if you believe in this kind of nonsense. So we're going to only have peace through war. I did a post recently that has, it's called, starts with the title Genocide. The human being is a pandemic. And we went down, we searched quite a bit. We didn't even finish, really, our search. But it had to do with genocide throughout, the recorded time up to modern time. And we got 300 million over that time total worldwide that they recorded, mind you. Number of the numbers obviously are fudged because no one knows exactly how many. So it's like 300 million plus, easily. So peace through war means you got to kill people. So, coming back to this pandemic BS, like you're supposed to be afraid of some illusion of some disease, and even if it was, it is consciousness. As I deal with other imbalances, and there are those of you in the audience who know what I mean, who came in with something called a disease, these boutique diseases. I said there's a consciousness, and I got rid of them. All of a sudden, oh, wow, I feel great now. So with that said, yes, question?
No, I was just saying, definitely all the random assortment of things that I had before meeting you, all the hospitals telling me for all the operations that I had to have, and it's just going to be something that will affect me for the rest of my life, and they are all gone now thanks to you. So realizing now all of it. So thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. But yeah, there are others who are in the audience who know what I'm talking about as well. So, yes, go ahead and say. Yeah, well, Ms. Ace bringing up something that I brought up in some sessions with others that have to do with, again, they're directing the system, density, yin, they're directing you to think a certain way, to believe a certain way. And consciousness desires to learn. And if you're younger consciousness, you look to older consciousness to learn from them. This is an aberration where older consciousness tend to be extremely damaged and are. It's like just something as simple as a little kid and they have the holiday, or the holy day of Christmas, and they start telling you what's Santa gonna bring, and Santa, who's that? And they give this elaborate description of some fat guy who squeezes down chimneys and gives you toys and things like that. So you basically are lying to your kid if you do that, and I don't care how anyone feels about it. I got a lot of lip service from people when I was raising my kids. Oh, that's no fun. Why don't you let your kid believe? I said, who's it fun for? It's obviously fun for the one who's pulling the prank. So you get a kid, to believe that's what the system is doing. If you're doing this, you're emulating the system and it's BS and it's lies. And they tell you, oh, it's fun, it's just natural. And think for yourself, damn it. There's nothing natural about lying, and you don't like to be lied to. Or they don't even remember if their parents lied to them and when they found out about it. I mean, the poor kid, and my kids had at least one kid in their class, and I think I've covered this before, but repetition's good, where whatever grade, I forgot what grade they were in elementary school, where some kid comes in, it's near Christmas time, and they go, what's Santa gonna get for you? And the other kids say, you still believe in that shit? And the next thing you know, this shrink, and they have to spend the rest of the day with them pointing out, this idiot still believes in Santa Claus. So who's it fun for? So I basically liken that to all these nonsensical mantras. But I kind of went off the road for a second and pull me back on. Oh yeah, Ms. A again, because it seemed like it would be something that would be another subject matter, but actually this does apply. That they talk about use your brain, use your brain, use your brain, but in reality, the brain is not your thinking, it's not your mind. The brain is a programmer. You know what your mind is? It's your whole consciousness. I might have said this before, but that's okay. So if you're thinking that I think from the brain, you're literally tapping, you're using your intent to tap into someplace that density wants you to tap into, so that they can get a leg up. Folks who want to believe, oh, there's good in this world, oh, give me a effing break. The movie The Matrix was written by a woman who literally was getting information from associates. There are other names to go by, Series B, so on, but she literally said, when they said, what inspired you to write this screenplay? She said, I just wrote what I was told to write. So some ones who had balance in mind decided that they should literally try to get this person to get some information out that has to do with the truth of what's going on in this world. So if, in the movie, The Matrix, and a lot of people really got triggered by that, so let's say this is the Matrix, which it is another word for what this is. If this is a Matrix, and the robots are kind of like some sensational stuff because they're not robots, they are robotic, a lot of them, but they're not robots who created the Matrix. It's density again created the Matrix. Okay, quiet. Idiots. So let's say logically, if I want to create something and I want to just basically pull the wool over everybody's eyes who comes into my game, am I going to put together anything or create anything that's going to benefit my food? So that my food can figure out, I don't think this is cool for me, let me get out of here. They're going to create something that's going to confuse you, and you're going to sit there and think that, well, because, they'll say, well, you're naive. It's not about naivety. If you're raised in a situation where no one's telling you what the hell's going on, guess what? You don't know what's going on. If they cut off the source of truth, all you have are lies to deal with. If they cut off your sense of logic, then you're having a hard time figuring out what is and what isn't. If they're telling you, I am the truth, and they're nothing but lies, And as you know, if you're here and you're getting older and older, and the illusion of age, over time you're paying attention, how many times have the society itself lied to you? Not to mention people, but society itself, governments itself, lie to you about things. If you're paying attention, if you're not too afraid to look, because there are a lot of people too afraid to look. So it's like stick their head in the sand, and guess what? If there's a bulldozer coming and it's heading your way, sticking your head in the sand isn't going to help you. So again, I'm moving in a lot of different directions at the same time. So going back to the concept of the brain, the brain is a filter. And they basically have the programming here. Your mind is your whole consciousness, your whole being. And it's like, how do I get there? How do I get there? Don't worry. Once you understand that the brain is a filter and it is the center of programming, your consciousness will naturally try to find the real, basically find the truth. That's how a lot of people get caught up in a lot of New Age stuff and a lot of this whatever, mumble jumble nonsense. Some might say that mine is mumble jumble, but I can deliver on what I'm talking about. I've never met a New Ager who could deliver jack but rhetoric. And just recently had a situation where another client has a friend who's just steeped in the New Age, and nothing wrong with crystals, and they're very, very pretty, but they don't really do much. Or they talk about, astrology and all of this other stuff, and they've been talking about it for years, and some of them, they're in it for decades, but they've invested in it so much that they don't know where else to go. But, they're trying to find another New Age process that, again, is just basically rhetoric that does not deliver. In some cases, their lives get worse the deeper they get into that type of thing. I've had articles where I've read about individuals who were in the church who were pastors, and they've been pastors for maybe 3 decades or so. And at some point, they're paying attention to what's going on, and then they realize, I don't think this is real, or that this stuff is true. But because they've invested so much of their lives in it, that they don't know where to go, so they just stay in it, and they don't even believe what they're preaching anymore. But because they don't, they spend so much time, they don't know where to go, they want to start over, or maybe they haven't gotten the nerve to start over again, so they'll stay in it, and they'll just basically keep spreading the lie, and then feeling really bad about it. Some end up being private drinkers, private drug users, anything to try to, quiet that feeling that they're literally bamboozling people. So again, with the going back to the concept of the brain as the center of thought, if you realize that the humanoid expression is not the only expression on in the world, just even here, people look at animals as though they're not consciousness, like they're things. But animals are consciousness. So there's different forms of expression in the universe. So there are certain things here, everything, well, let's say most things have a head, but, if you got some little small creature that you'll see that doesn't look like it has eyes or a head, but somehow it senses its way around doing its thing, that's a consciousness, that's an expression, that's a viable expression. It may be what can be considered a more minimal expression, but nonetheless, it's an expression where that thing you don't even know where its head is, or where its thought processes come from, and how it does what it does. So again, I think I talked about literally, just the head is it's almost like the CCTV for density, because they don't like that one. So it looks through your eyes, hear through your ears, it affects what you say. The number of times people say, I don't even know why I said that. But they'll say something and just cause all of this, this pain and angst, and screw up a relationship with people. Said, well, I don't know, I lost control. Yes, you never really had much control. So if you think in terms that the brain is your thinking center, think again. And they say, well, I get hit in the head, then I can't remember anything. Because you put all of your intent in this central area. And there have been individuals who have had situations where they've had head injuries, but they don't lose their minds in the way that someone else who may have had the same kind of head injury. Because maybe they're not thinking in terms of the brain so much as the person who ends up being affected more by the concept that I think for my brain. Okay, so we're going to move on from there. Unless there's some question. Okay.
The next one is, sorry.
Yeah, they're just being a little problematic. Give me a second. I'm going to do a little more clearing on Jose.
As above, so below.
As above, so below.
I don't want that one.
Yeah, they didn't want that one. Again, talking about trying to affect how someone speaks in your throat. I put a lot of things out of people's throats. And sometimes there's a lot of angst there as well, having to do with speech. If you want to, if you're someone who's has to do public speaking and you're not used to doing it a lot, and something wants to cause you angst, and the angst is just for them basically to feed off of your angst, literally. You may not be talking about something that's groundbreaking or anything, but their opportunity to feed. I used to have stage fright when I would have to give speeches years ago, or when I would have a situation where I had to sing. And because I'm stubborn, I go up there and I had a situation where I had to sing at this forum once. This is when I was living in New York City, and I started out, and it's like the body was doing something that that the mind didn't want to do, and my voice went into like an extreme vibrato. And the whole song, I knew the song, but I sang it with like that. And I said, holy crap. I said, I got to keep going. I said, it's a profession. Keep going, keep going, keep going. All the way to the end. I said, oh, that sucked. And so I finished, and I'm like, okay, all right, okay. I'm sneaking away. And someone said, wow, that's really cool. How do you do your voice like that? How do you vibrate? How do you vibrato like that? It was like, I had nothing to do with that. But it had to do with, at that time, I didn't have as much clarity, because I was in my early 20s at the time, or mid-20s actually. I didn't have as much clarity as I have now, and contain things as I do now, so that I have total control over the vehicle, over my avatar. But we were, so we're going to as above, so below.
No.
Another BS mantra. It's literally like the horror movies, or I don't know if they even do it in religion, where there are those who would say it's almost like you have to have war to have peace. So it's literally telling you that you're stuck in this realm, or you're stuck in a sucky existence. There's nothing you can do about it, because that's literally density. Again, telling you, I control everything. Don't try to escape. So as above, I control that. As below, I control the whole thing. Don't even try. Don't even try. And that's, you'll see some shows or whatever, or you have people who are just really jerks, who, like these little bullies or whatever, who will try to tell you, oh, you can't beat me, you're weak. It's called psyching someone out. So as above, as below, it's like I would maybe say a passive psyche, but they would say maybe more of an intense psyche. Passive psyche. Because you may not think anything of it, but literally you're running a mantra through your head if that's one that comes into your thoughts on a regular. So it's just telling you, don't even try. You know, your life sucks, and that's just the way it is. I've had individuals who come for a session. This was a couple years ago, and this person said, "Well, I figured, you know, the trouble in my life is my lot in life. You know, that, you know, my sucky life, that's just my lot in life." And I think there's something where, and it may be a religious one having to do with you're being punished, or they'll talk about karma.
No.
It's just my karma. Let's see, is karma really legit? Karma is another dense entity mind screw. There is no karma. Karma is just something saying, well, you must have screwed somebody around in your previous expression if you believe in previous expressions of past lives. You know, they got something for everybody. They got people who don't believe in past life, and people who do believe in past life. We got you coming and going.
No. Chief, there was another, like on Google, they were talking about how they say God's above, God's below, and that it means that everyone you see around you is like you.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard what Ms. A had said. Anyone not hear that? Because she'll repeat it if you did.
Can you repeat it, please? Thank you.
Yeah, can you do that a little louder? She's having a hard time here because these guys are really, there's some things going on that literally on the planet that have been ramping up over the last several months, and it's kind of hitting a fever pitch right now. So excuse us for, you know, even when I'm actually literally speaking, I feel them just, you know, it's like flies hitting against your screen door or something. So hold a second, let me do a little clearer, and then Ms. A will repeat that.
It was trying to say that God's above, God's below, that everyone you see around you is like you.
So we're going to have Ms. A sit up strong. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Excuse me for a second. Relax. A little better? Okay. So it has to do with as above, so below. So when Ms. A was looking up the definition or, you know, or the origin, there are several origins. One's talking about God above or something like that.
God's above, God's below.
God's above, God's below.
And everyone around you doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and that everyone around you is like you is an interpretation also of as above, so below. So again, it's literally, you're living in a realm of mind screwing. So everything you look at, when we do the reviews for our movies, it's literally telling you that there are messages, subliminal messages, and not so subliminal messages in movies that are basically to shut you down, to keep you in what I also call the chicken coop. Hold a second. There's some things coming up from that. I'll send one off. I'll be right back.
Chief, would you say that God's above, God's below is like density trying to tell them that everyone is a deity or something?
Well, I think that we're taking the muscle test on that to see if that's the definition. I don't really see it quite like that, but we're going to check to see what the associates have to say. You said that you're wondering if the God's above, God's below, is saying that everyone's a deity. I'm not really feeling that, but is that true? Strong? Okay, strong. Okay, is it saying that everyone's a deity? Okay, that's really weird.
Someone said whoever will buy it. That's
Whoever will buy it.
So usually they want very dense people to buy it.
Well, generally, yeah. Well, I can see if you're putting it that way. I talk about these, they're like NCs, but I call them pigeons. And these are the ones who will start to talk into the ears of people who are vulnerable to their rhetoric. Some would call, I don't want to be insulting, but kind of weak-minded, who want to be special. A lot of times they're kind of set up by being beaten down as children, verbally abused as children, made to feel like they're nothing or they're less. And so, so it's not so much that they're born weak-minded, it's just that their minds have been beat down to the point where they want to feel better than what people tell them, or feel like they're a much more viable person than what they've been told. So these guys come in, once you're all, tuned up, and they'll start to tell you that only you can save the planet Earth, or you are the most powerful being on the planet, or you're the most knowledgeable being on the planet, you're the strongest spiritual being on the planet, and so on. And you'll find these individuals strutting around believing that. And what they do, they tune in to others who have been weakened, have had their minds weakened, and they will find followers. They won't have any proof of it, of course. But sometimes, when density wants to punctuate it, they'll give them a little power trick or something like that. They'll bend the spoon or something, or guess what's on the back of cards and things like that. And that's tuning the person up. Now, how I weigh whether these folks are legitimately, or they have this legitimate ability, does it change anything in the world? Does it do any deep changing in people who are following? So with Neo-Shamanism, it's about giving you information so that you have the option to, like, okay, well, thanks, Chief. I think I'm good to go. And I said, good then. On your way. That's where you want to go. These guys, it's like, no, if you want any answers, you got to come to me. Any answers, you got to come to me. Don't try to think for yourself. Only I will think for you. So in this, I guess, mortal existence, this person is standing there, I'm the only answer. Everyone's getting on their knees, doing the thing, whatever, to him. And then one day he transitions out, and then they're left like, what do we do now? Because, Mr. Wizard is gone. The answer man is no longer here. How do I think? Then the pigeons start talking to someone else, maybe someone who was close to them. Okay, now you are the one. And it's just this perpetual nonsense that takes you in a circle. And this has been going on for a very, very long time. And you look at the state of this planet, and you really don't see any improvement, but they'll say, well, got an iPhone, that's an improvement. We got self-driving cars, that's an improvement. But how does that help you as a consciousness? So that's how I weigh it. So anyway, years ago, they reminded me, when I was involved with just started getting involved with a men's group, which, it served its purpose for a minute. And we did a retreat in North Carolina, and, these campsites, that's where they used to do these retreats, and it'd be like a 5-day retreat. And we had people from all over. You had, preachers and lawyers and doctors and just, regular folks who have, regular run-of-the-mill type of jobs. And I was talking with a group of men, and there was this older guy who was a preacher, and he said that he wanted to find some truth, because the men's groups, they're kind of shaman heavy. Guys who claim to be shaman will be over these things. And, they'd be kind of interesting. If you've never experienced anything like that, it's just an experience, literally. Some guys had some ability, but I would never call any of them full shamans, from what I know what shamans are supposed to be. So he was talking about his congregation. He was an older guy. And he said, well, I felt that there was something wrong after a while. when he started feeling that he was the Word, that he was God. And somewhere along the way, he kind of felt there was a little something wrong with that. And so he joined these men's conferences to try to get to the bottom of something, and and feeling like, if there's supposed to be this one God or this Jesus, whatever, why does he think that he is it? And there's a number of individuals that have been out over the years. Like there was a guy from South Korea, I think it's Sun Myung Moon, I believe was the guy's name, and he was supposed to be the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. And because people are tuned up with religion, that's it's almost like mandatory for most people to be tuned up with religion. You have to believe something and believe this because your parents believed it and they've been believing this for hundreds of years. Here, read this book if you can decipher the damn thing. So he, I don't even know what happened to this guy, but I remember he was really a big deal during the mid 70s when I became aware of this person into the 80s, and then after a while I didn't hear anything about him. But he used to do these mass weddings where they had these pictures and there'd be like 100 couples, and he'd do these mass weddings, and all these people believed that he was a reincarnation of Jesus Christ. But then there's some other guy that says, I'm the reincarnation. He had his little following. In other words, he has his little following, and so on and so forth. Where it's like there used to be a show, like The Real Jesus Christ, Please Stand Up.
Sorry.
It's okay. At least you're laughing instead of
Slim
moaning.
Shady song came in my mind.
Oh, what's that, Slim Shady?
Slim Shady.
Anyway, so might as well be Slim
I
Shady.
know.
So I lost track of
Sorry.
But anyway, where was I going to say with this?
You were talking about people who listen to pigeons and they are very insecure. They want to be kitties.
Yeah, they're beaten into insecurity. So again, it's not just belittling someone, because literally everyone here is a victim, and you don't get out of here, and you're not in here without becoming a victim to them, because one, your eyes are programmed not to see them, and if you feel them, you're going to have someone who doesn't feel anything telling you that you're crazy. Or if you do see them, they don't see them, then they're going to tell you you're crazy. So I've known children who are very, very sweet kids, but one of the parents, if not both of them sometimes, dump on this kid like nobody's business, because those parents are so contaminated and so toxic, and in most cases, they've been so toxic that they are dense entities themselves, and their job is to squash the life and the light out of someone who has life. So when we talk about pigeons, these types of individuals, or these kids, end up, sometimes they just get really, really angry. They start to get very dense themselves, and they'll want to basically take revenge. Some of them want to take revenge on society, and some just want to prove, I want to prove that I'm special, but it gets out of hand to the point where they want to believe that they are Neo, or that they are Captain Marvel, or they're just a number of things that are considered to be these gloriously, powerful and all-seeing and all-knowing type of people. When in reality, they don't really know anything, but if they manage to convince people to follow them, at some point, they're going to hit a wall and they won't have the answers, and then they're going to start to make stuff up. So anyway, that's literally how pigeons work. And that's literally how people get conditioned into these roles of wanting to be superior and over everyone, and have everyone follow them. So we're going to move to, what do you have next?
Is there space for prayer in Neo-Shamanism?
We have a question about, is there a place for prayer in Neo-Shamanism? And I had covered it in a number of ways previously. But to give you an answer to that, is there a place for prayer in Neo-Shamanism? No. Because what prayer is about giving power to something else to literally do something for you. So you have, this is another thing about density, it tells you you don't have anything. You don't have the ability to affect your own life. You don't have the juice to change things for yourself, or they literally through that, they get you to weaken your own intent. So you may have a certain amount of energy. If it's about praying for someone's health or whatever, praying for someone's health never effing works. I've had even a family member once ask me to pray for a relative who was suffering from an attachment. And she was so delusional. She said, I know that you're about prayer. I said, I don't know where you heard that shit. I'm not about prayer. I'm about results. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find attachment on that person, and I'm going to remove it. I found attachment, and I removed it. But it was a family member, and she had something that was affecting her heart, and everyone was all upset and afraid. Her husband called me in the middle of the night and crying, and I'm looking, because it doesn't pay to lose your shit, to get panicky. So I don't panic. I just like, okay, let me see. I said, oh, I see what it is. She's not dying. Not now, anyway. And they said, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. I said, she's not dying. Thanks for telling me. I'm on it. And this was about 8 years ago. And she's healthy as a horse now. But it wasn't prayer. Prayer is basically, what it is, it's like you hired some unknown person that you haven't seen to come and do a job for you. Do this favor for me. Some people, say, I'll go to church every Sunday from here on out if you do this for me. But you're basically trusting in something you don't even freaking know. And a lot of times they'll show up and they'll take your essence and so on and so forth. While they're doing that, they're going, sucker, give me more, give me more, give me more. And the number of people who have passed on in spite of prayer, there even did statistics, which was kind of interesting, that, I guess hospitals were literally, jockeying for a position or something, where they found that prayer doesn't work. So when you pray, you're giving away your ability to actually help that person directly with your own energy, with your own intent. The thing that you're praying to doesn't have any juice. He wants yours. It can't help you because it doesn't have the juice to help you. And there's staged, healings also, staged healings. And if you follow after the so-called healing, then you'll find out the truth, that it's staged.
In the Christian cult, if you're praying for a healing and you're not getting it, they tell you to start fasting and praying, so you get even more essence and weaken yourself even more. Yeah, didn't you have that experience in your family? Yeah. And then he passed on. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and he passed on, even in spite of, fast and and ask for forgiveness for whatever you might have done. Again, they set that bar to get into heaven really high. It's like a man's. Have you ever had an erection? Really? Yes. You sinned. Ask for forgiveness. So guys walking around, we have one male, other than myself on there. I'll tell you, especially when you're a young guy, controlling your erections, give me a break. If you have attraction, if you lusted for someone, they turn up sexuality up here in the filters so high, especially in some people, that all they do is lust after everything they see. That's because something external is manipulating how they feel and how they think. You said that getting to heaven, the bar that Density said that is like holding your breath for 2 weeks. And if you can't, then, sorry. Yeah, it is literally, I came up when we were just discussing that. And I said, it's like telling you, if you want to get into heaven,
hold your breath for 2 weeks. In other words, there really is no heaven, really, there really isn't. And I've had, family members who are just staunch Christians. After a certain point, they get to a certain age and say, heaven and hell is what you make it here on earth, dude. And I tended to find that made more logic to me than the other that a lot of people have been beat down with. But what was the other one? I guess we can move on to the next one. But there seemed like there's something else, but that's okay. We can move on to the next one.
Does it matter if a person is buried or cremated after death, and does it affect their journey after death?
Okay. I don't know if anyone heard that, but does it matter whether a person is cremated or buried after the transition? Now, it does make some difference, but I'm going to just see what the ladies have to say. Does it make a difference? And they say, yes, it does.
No.
Now, for me, back when I was in my 20s, and within my family units, we all had decided that cremation, because it's like literally burying someone is like making an altar for them in some isolated place, which ties them to that place. You've probably read things about people, or they, in America, in its greed, would build these complexes over cemeteries. Sometimes they would, most of the time they're supposed to exhume all the coffins and then move them somewhere else. But by that time, whatever part of the consciousness, which is generally the body consciousness, is what you will see as ghost, which is separate from the mind, from the higher consciousness. So we can get into that later if you have any questions. What are you talking about? Isn't it just one? No, there's two. There's the body consciousness and there's the higher consciousness. So people, and if anyone here have not seen a story or read a story about ghosts in cemeteries, I don't know where you've been. That one is just classic. Everywhere where there are cemeteries, people find ghosts. And that has to do with that consciousness, that body consciousness, being so connected to that physical vehicle that it just has a hard time leaving it, getting away from it, because it identifies so much with that illusion of a body that it hangs around. I never even asked this question. Does it think that it's going to be resurrected at some point? It's just stuck, just illogically stuck. So cremation is actually a better way of releasing a consciousness from the realm, the whole consciousness from the realm. And I like the idea where, individuals just, scatter their ashes somewhere and so on, and not creating, there are people who really also, it depends on what you do with the ashes, because you can actually create an altar in your house with someone's ashes.
Oh, shit.
So I don't know if you've ever been to people's houses where they have an urn, and you said, oh, okay, those are ashes, all right, okay. And say, well, okay, well, here's my mom. There you can say, this is my mom. And guess what? Mom's body consciousness is there, oh, okay, I'm getting so bored watching you guys argue and so on and so forth. I really like to go somewhere else. But they're holding them there. That's all, there's this whole reminiscence, and you have to cry, you have to grieve, and you have to, like this is the only existence in the universe. This, the mom's expression is so important that you have to hang on to her essence. You're not doing her a solid, you're being selfish. So if you get ashes, disperse them somewhere, out in nature. I remember there's a point where they're making a law where people couldn't throw ashes into the ocean. I said, well, that's crazy. They dump garbage there all the time. Maybe it's doing them a favor by not throwing them in the ocean. Yeah, but there's no law about, if you ever lived in New York, they have these barges full of garbage, and they take it out, I don't know how many miles out, and they dump it in the ocean. Some guy got an urn with, his late mom or whoever, and he, okay, buddy, all right, you got a ticket here, or, at the most, just throw you in jail for it. This is the insanity of this realm. They want you to actually lock these consciousness down and have them hanging around the cemetery or hanging around your fireplace or wherever you got the urn. Because they're still feeding off of that consciousness even after its transition. Because the consciousness doesn't necessarily lose its essence after it transitions, because transition is transition. It's not death. You say death, it's like a battery, dead battery. It's not a dead battery. The physical illusion can be a dead battery, but it has a certain, I think someone even asked that question having to do with how long the vibration of a person exists, or the consciousness of a person, exists in the so-called deceased body after the person has transitioned. And it depends on the situation, depends on the person, that there are times that the essence of that person will stick with that body. Certain cultures use like 6 days or something, or 8 days, but it will stay there for a little while. But eventually, if you do right, it'll leave and it will move on to its next expression that has nothing to do, most times, with being part of your family. So, we can move to the next one, unless there's any questions on that.
So the next one is water. Do you want me to get the picture and try to show them?
Okay, Lucy, I told you we were going to answer the question having to do with water. The Ms. A is going to get an image together, and your question had to do with the difference between moving water, like I guess rivers and things like that, and streams, opposed to lakes and bodies of water that don't seem to have any tributaries, that lead out, which means you're not really realizing that there are underground tributaries called ley lines that water runs across. And water is literally another form of consciousness. Or it's just consciousness, but it's another form if you want to, if that makes you feel more comfortable. It's another form, but it is consciousness just the same as we are consciousness. It's just that how to figure out where does the consciousness begin and end. They'll talk about in certain cultures who still have a lot more connection to nature, to Gaia, would talk about the river spirit, or actually the spirit of a certain ocean. So you say, wow, where does that consciousness, how much of that ocean does that consciousness belong to? Or I wouldn't call it like ownership, but is it's its realm in which it exists. And I think we talked about the difference in color of waters in the ocean, depending on where you are in the world. There are places with emerald green water. There are places with, like light blue water. When I took a cruise to Cancun years ago, and we were taking the shuttle from this cruise ship, and I looked out the window, I thought it was some kind of weird illusion, because the water was blue like berry Kool-Aid. So the difference in color can also tell you what consciousness exists in those areas. They don't like that one. Okay. Now, is that true? That is true, as the associates say. They have no reason to BS. So now there's also what we had found some time ago. We were doing some research. It had to do with things having to do with so-called new species that they found in the ocean. And that was like since 2016. Well, it might be interesting.
While you're talking, I'll go.
Did you want to show the square waves?
I already did.
Oh, you did show this. Oh, Missy did show the square waves.
Sorry.
All right. Yeah, sorry. Well, square wave, how long is it going to take for you to do that? Because we can actually do that some other form. Yeah, some other form. So keep this on rolling because I'm going to need your arm. So the picture that Ms. A showed you are actual photos and of square waves, and they don't exist just in one place. It exists in various other areas on the planet. And again, the consciousness affected by vibration. So depending on what's under the water, which no one ever talks about going under, well, also because they say it's quite dangerous too, because the waves are going all these different directions. But if, as far as like going with some kind of submersible, it could be a little dicey because a lot of the times these square waves are near shores. And these waves are responding to some kind of vibration. I already must have tested on this, some kind of vibration underneath the water. And it literally creates this square, these square waves. A lot of times there's dense vibration. Not all the time. All the time? All the time. All the time there's dense vibration. So it has to do with whoever else is on, in this, on the planet with us.
Sorry, because one of the things I was wondering is would the oceans and the rivers and everything was here before Gaia was hijacked, or whether it's an expression now, like there's all the different expressions as you said. Mm-hmm. And also I like being in water. I always feel very drawn to wanting to be in water, but then I know we've talked in the past about rivers being super highways for density and attachments. So whenever I get in water, I focus on containing the water and containing myself, but I found myself more like, I'm not sure if I should get into rivers anymore, but, and I was wondering.
You can't get into rivers. Actually, if I do believe correctly, I was saying that it is a highway, and things that are not dense also travel that highway as well.
Oh, okay. So,
if you're containing it, you're basically are pushing things away that may be dense. So sometimes, depending on what happens when you get into a river, when people get in there, they start getting nibbled on and things like that. That just means probably something kind of dense harassing you. Many times you get in the river, you wade across, whatever, nothing bothers you. You see the fish and so on and so forth. But it's literally density cannot claim that. They just use it as a highway. And rivers are basically ley lines also. So when we're talking about lakes, that's where they're getting water supply from under the ground, which is like, underground rivers and streams and so on. But because of the amount of density and toxicity on Gaia, a lot of these ley lines have been polluted. So again, with that, you just basically you contain. Because a lot of folks do swim in, man, they're trying to hit me. A lot of the people do swim in lakes and do all kinds of activities in lakes. But again, it depends on the vibration of the person as to what happens to them when they're in the lake. But if you are practicing your containment, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have any issues. So waterways are not owned, but can be contaminated depending on where it is. So if you're talking about when I was growing up in Michigan and I lived out in the rural area, and there was this town I went to school, and they had this. It was a pretty decent sized river that would go, from one. We know how rivers roll, but it would go past this town. And how density works, who are behind factories and pollution and so on and so forth, because their whole thing is to kill Gaia anyway. There was a cement factory, a cement plant, that employed people there, but the cement plant was right on the shore of the river. And where did all the byproducts go? Into the river. So I would be more concerned about swimming near something like that than just getting into a lake or a river. I mean, when I did the river ceremony in Burma, that was a beautiful river. It was high up in the mountains. The entity who considered herself to be the river spirit of that spirit, of that river, had a lot of life in it and so on and so forth. Didn't have that much toxicity, but because of I think I talked about when the missionaries would come into these places where people were actually living very close to the land and getting everything needed from there. And a lot of times if they end up taking on a certain religion, it had to do with densities interfering with the flow of their balance with the nature around them. Usually having to do with a person where I think when we were reviewing Black Panther, a passive plant, usually passive plants. People who I call passive plants, people who are born dense with the purpose of literally destroying that village and sending them into a belief system that has nothing to do with balance. And so what they would do, if they accepted it due to this plant that was born into that village, they would start to turn their back, or there would be a drought sponsored by, yin or whatever, and also having to do with weakened individuals who are supposed to be shamans. And the reason there are not any real shamans is because, I should say, the clones of density invaded all these areas at some point in time and started slaughtering these shamans. And there are a record of that stuff, from Africa to the United States, anywhere where there were individuals whose culture still believed in that. So these shamans did, I'm not a shaman, and would say I'm beyond that, because where I come from is not just Earth, it's from out universally. Because Earth is part of the universe. Earth is not separate. So if you have people who are talking about their shamans and the nature of this and the nature of that and the nature of that, and then they say something about stars and astrology and so on and so forth, in general you're looking at a hologram up there in the sky. They're not true in the sense of shamanism. They can be shaman-like, I would say. They may be able to do a few tricks here and there, but they don't have the same expansiveness of the original shamans from centuries ago. So what does density want to do? They want to upset balance. They come in and they take away those individuals who have that awareness, that knowledge, as well as the elders who are familiar with that knowledge. So if you have shamans from certain cultures, a lot of it has to do with people who remember parts of what these guys were doing. So they can do certain things, but none of that is ever really enough to affect the lives of those people in a consistent, positive way. So I think I just went from that. We were talking about the rivers and the density. No, I unless I had an off day, I really wouldn't say that rivers are just innately dense. They're not innately dense, but they can be turned very toxic, i.e. the example of the plants and factories that they put on the edge of rivers, which again, tells you something. You say, well, why would they want to poison water? This is what, this is how this is something that you need for life. When I lived in Woodstock, they had all these systems, all these corporate things. Those are all dense. They're dense. There's nothing but density. Creating tchotchke and convincing you that you need these tchotchkes so that they continue to, pour toxins and shit into the water. In Woodstock, they had this neighborhood. By the time I moved there, they had removed this service station. I guess this old service station. And as you know, they store the gasoline underground in these big tanks, and the tanks inevitably would rupture. And the people in this particular neighborhood it was called, I forgot what it's called, Cancer Alley or something like that, because the tank got old, they ruptured, the fuel went into the ley lines, the groundwater, literally. And people have pumps, wells, excuse me. And, wells, are supposed to be healthier, And, even there, they were testing water, like yearly, just to make sure of how much or to see how much toxicity was still in the water. And over a decade, it hadn't changed any. So they had to truck in water when, naturally they're supposed to be able to just pull it out of the ground and drink it. I don't know if you recall fracking, and this is something that was talked about a lot in America about 15, 20 years ago, which they were going in and supposedly getting this methane that's locked in the rocks and so on and so forth. It reports that there really wasn't enough methane for them to be going through all this ridiculous, these ridiculous motions to get it. But there would be news shows where some guy, he has a well, and his house has been there for like 30 years, and he has this well and so on, and all of a sudden he's opening up the spigot and it smells like methane. And so newscasters show up, and this is not just one, newscasters show up, and the guy will say, well, let me show you something. They said, this fracking stuff, I don't know what they're doing, but it's poisoning the water. He said, let me show you something. He'd turn on the water, strike a match, and flames will come out of the spigot along with the water. So, anything that's toxic has to do with what I call, in other words, the clones of density. Really. Their purpose is to kill this consciousness. But good news, they're not going to kill it.
No.
They try it and try it and try it and try it, but they're not. I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, if there's anything, did I cover what you were concerned about, Lucy?
Yes, thank you. That did. Thank you very much, Chief.
Okay. Thank you for the question. That was good. Very good. Okay. What was this study? Okay, so that we won't have this really silent space here. I'm not going to deal with the organ thing.
Okay. So we were talking about water that is increasing, stagnant, having lower.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, we're going to continue with the water. Then we're going to move on to something else. Well, I have to do with lakes, and the fact that lakes are fed by underground tributaries. And that's how they keep their level, keep their level up. If you don't see any river or streams leading to it, and it's there year-round, has to do with how much groundwater, which is basically underground streams and tributaries running through. But also, again, as water as consciousness, we talked about lake turnover. So someone was like, well, this lake or a large pond. It's just still sitting there, and does it get stagnant? If there's no water tributaries, well, to tell you the truth, it would just dry up anyway. So there's always something, some water being fed into a pond if the pond is deep enough. And you will see that the water levels will lower and get increased depending on, whether it's rainy season and so on. So again, even these would be considered little consciousness, because water is also consciousness. And there's such a thing called lake turnover, where literally the lake will push the water from the lower water from the bottom up to the top. And they call that lake turnover. So it's like it's naturally refreshing itself. And how you can tell what's stagnant, usually some smaller, little ponds, where you will really find a really dead, stagnant water is like these pools or something that people will build, and they put water in it, and there's nowhere for it to escape. And if they're not in there constantly cleaning it, you get algae. And algae is very dense because it sucks the oxygen out of everything. So if you put fish in there, and that's why in aquariums you have an aquarium, you gotta be really, you gotta be diligent, or you get these little sucker fish that will, will eat the stuff so that it doesn't take over and steal all the oxygen from all the other life force, not life force, all the creatures that live in that, in that aquarium. So if you want to see what's a healthier like pond or lake, you'll see a lot of fish and things like that, a lot of birds. If you see birds, that's because there's a lot of fish. Or you see frogs and things like that because it has at least some stability enough to support life. So, but if it's something that's usually something that's stagnant, it usually has something to do with man-made, where they're not really thinking in terms of this is containing the water, and it has no way to run out, and it has no way for things to come in unless you refresh it from the surface. Okay. That's nothing to little.
Okay, and is there a difference between saltwater and freshwater?
Okay, there is a difference. There's a difference between freshwater and saltwater. There's a difference.
No.
And it's funny because you hear first because I didn't even muscle test on this one. So there is life in saltwater because there's fish in saltwater, but the fish are saltwater fish. And it's kind of an odd thing, which was a curiosity for me for years, but it's like one of those passing curiosities. Because, if water is running from an ocean into a river, or usually the fresh water runs out to the ocean. And when I say that the water is filtered from the ocean, when it evaporates into the clouds, generally, does the salt from the sea go into the clouds? No, it's like a natural filtering system. And then that water falls in the mountains, the higher plains, as fresh water. And then it feeds down. The semantics is, what's the difference in why is there, saltwater fish and freshwater fish, we can get into it, but it'll be kind of boring, I think, at this point. Yeah, also saltwater conducts more energy than freshwater.
Oh.
So they did this test where if someone was to drop an electrical wire, if they drop an electrical wire in any water you're in it, you're going to get fried, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to die. But this is like the difference between dying a little slower and dying a little faster. If it's salt water, they drop a cable in there, you're going to fry a lot faster. So salt water does conduct a lot of electricity, which means it has more energetic vibration. And it's interesting that the largest masses of water are salt water, which means that they're part of Gaia's life force.
No.
All tributaries and so on are part of Gaia's life force, but for some reason, with salt water, it has a lot more. I haven't gone really that deep into it yet, but I will. Unfortunately, we didn't get into it this time because there's so much information around the question about water, how much energy, better energy here. So we're talking about the difference between flowing fresh water opposed to standing fresh water that seems to be standing. But again, if you don't see any inlets or whatever, the water's coming from under the ground. Well, Ms. is asking, is it because there's more minerals in crystals in the ocean water? I haven't asked this question, so I'm going to ask, is it because there are more minerals and crystals in ocean water? Kind of went down slow. More minerals? More minerals. More crystals? No. More minerals. So minerals are literally, would be, I would always say it is in the crystal family when you talk about minerals. As a matter of fact, there was a study having to do with what everything was made of. And these guys had these atomic microscopes, and they were, would crank it up as far as they could to see even what water was made of, and they found that water was crystals, which was kind of interesting. So it's a different, I'd say, consistency of crystal for each thing that you see. So even in the sense, is a tree made of crystals? When you get to the, to the molecular structure of it, trees are crystals. Are these illusions that we were walking around, are these made of crystals? So it gets weird, and I really wasn't planning on getting there because it's like binge your mind, but crystals do conduct things. Quartz as a crystal holds memory. And I think I talked about that in some other forum, that the computers, they put a lot of quartz in computers because it holds memory. Yeah, and this hologram is, if everything's made of crystal, so it's a hologram. So this is the hologram that's different from what you may see as a hologram that you see on Star Trek or some sci-fi movie. This is more evolved than that. It has some kind of consistency, but every image that you see has some kind of vibration, but this has a vibration also. It has, these finite crystals that they would actually even, I would have it say that maybe the crystals are also inside of molecules. So in other words, hold on a second. If someone says that, is this solid or not? Is anything really solid? Is anything really solid? No. Because if you think about molecules, they vibrate, which means in order for it to vibrate, it has to have some space to vibrate. So depending on how much space it has, depends on how soft it is or how it flows. Depending on how little space it has to vibrate, but it has to have some space to vibrate, you will find steel, cement, rock, things like that, because they vibrate. That's how you find vibration in everything, because it's moving. Always moving. A building vibrates. All the different materials vibrate at a certain rate. So you're thinking, I'm the solid building? Not really. That's how things deteriorate, because there's space rubbing together, and eventually, in this realm, it deteriorates, gets old, falls apart. Okay.
This one's about swimming pools. Are they okay, or is this saltwater pool better?
Swimming pools are not okay. It's like basically, jumping into a toxic bath, literally. Swimming pools are toxic, and because they put chlorine in it. I don't know if they put I guess you could put too much of something, but can you possibly put too much salt in a saltwater pool? Yeah, but it's still not as dangerous as a chlorine pool. Whoa, I guess too much, pretty much the same. I guess I want to get you somewhere, so.
อาจารย์คะ
Oh, yeah.
how about the stream คะ because I have to go like with the kid at the stream almost every week at the stream.
Mm-hmm.
So what should I do before get into the stream or to make sure that okay. Okay. Okay.
And contain those kids. Because you never know, you have a stinker amongst those kids. Go get in that stream and follow it up for everyone else. You think I'm joking. That can happen. Depending on how a person vibrates, depends on how they can change an environment. It's like someone, if you're in a room with a number of people, and the energy is flowing pretty well and so on, and then someone shows up, and then the atmosphere changes. That has to do with the amount of density that person has on them. I went to some stream, it was a couple of years ago, and if you can empath the consciousness and open it up enough to empath the consciousness, and you feel something trying to communicate with you, and you're next to the stream, a lot of times, if it's not some entity or something, it's the stream that is trying to communicate with you. And we were visiting a place. It was in mountains. Was it not Miriam? Doysatet, I think, like Doysatet. And it's in the mountains and whatever. And we were sitting by this stream, and it looked like an okay stream, but I can always sense, when there's a bit of toxicity in an environment, and the stream literally starts to communicate. And what I saw was literally as it manifests itself as a young girl. I can do that right in your arm. And what that stream, or what you said, that spirit or that consciousness said that there's a problem upstream. Yeah, they said that poisoning Big Sister, but I think it was like poisoning through her though, wasn't it? Yeah. So I'm asking around, and then the person that we were with was saying that they had some project going on upstream. Like, I don't know whether it was a government thing or whatever. They didn't quite understand what the hell they were doing, but they're digging around up there and doing some things up there. And I don't know if they were putting things, it seemed like they were putting things in the stream, which was literally killing the stream. The water looked clear and everything, but it depends on what's going on upstream as to how healthy that stream is.
She said that they're poisoning her, but the intense poisoning was worse for Big Sister.
Yeah, and it was interesting because, this was my first time there. Our first time, Zay was with me as well. And yeah, she said they're poisoning Big Sister, but she wasn't feeling very well. So, I'm doing what I can to basically bump up her energy. And so later that day, the person takes us to another location where another friend of his were living, and they were living off of that same stream. And she was talking about some river ceremony that the monks were doing at the temple. I think in the coming few days or whatever, and it had to do with, I think, blessing the river or something like that. And when she was saying that they were poisoning Mother, we found out that they called the river that this little one connected with. They called it was like two rivers or three, I think, or two rivers kind of like conjoining, and this little one kind of comes in, branches in as well. And the woman said that they call it Mother and Father, those rivers. So literally, she was literally not BSing about, what was going on downstream. That even the locals call those rivers Mother and Father. So anything that has to do with toxicity has to do with work as usual for density, again, to try to kill Gaia. So just, to make you feel better, Gaia is no longer dying.
Thank you ค่ะอาจารย์
You're welcome. And if you want to contribute to that, do your containment. Your intent. Do your containment. It helps everything. It's not like you're going to single-handedly save. That's a bunch of nonsense. But you can contribute to, by not being toxed anymore, by doing containment. You keep the toxicity off yourself. Therefore, you're not oozing all our Gaia anymore. Okay.
So the only pools that are okay, recreational, natural pools.
Yeah, natural pools, but I would say, my own personal opinion, but I may be wrong, mildly salted salt pools are not bad. Oh, they're giving me a little bit of something.
They're okay.
They're okay.
But natural pools are.
Natural pools are best, but that means that you have to have, literally, making personal pools are not really that natural anyway. Because water's best when it connects with other water. But again, depending on what's going on down the way, where they're purposely poisoning the groundwater, you can make as many natural pools as you want. But if somebody's poisoning it, it's kind of defeats the purpose. Okay.
The next question is, our body, they say, is made of mainly water. Is that true? Is that a program?
Well, this, and I know any of you probably read any of this stuff. They talk about the body is made, I forgot, some large amount of water, and that is true. But again, water is crystals and so on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the body, that's, in other words, that's why you actually can feel energy. Water conducts energy, and there's a certain amount of salt in your body. And if you have a certain balance of salt, that that also helps with your balance. So why they would have, even farmers would have like these, have cattle and things like that. They have these massive salt licks for the cows and and whatever, to basically lick this thing to balance it, to keep itself balanced. And you'll find that animals are very good about keeping themselves balanced if they have access to the things that they need to keep themselves balanced. So incarcerating animals, you're going to have to bring things in and try to keep balance. But if an animal is free, very seldom will you find sickly animals unless something's sick on the land.
Are hot springs beneficial?
Someone asked, are hot springs beneficial? And yeah, they are.
Oh.
And a lot of times there's a lot of sulfur in hot springs, and never really checked where the sulfur is dense. It depends on the levels.
Oh.
The sulfur, it will smell like rotten eggs. Sometimes it's like extremely rotten eggs, but it's not the healthiest hot spring. A mildly sulfuric, smell to the water of hot springs, no problem. But if it's a lot, it almost, it's like smelling something that's rotting, which means there's something wrong with the hot springs. Something's going on underground that's not very healthy, that's not balanced.
Question, sorry. Can it also be due to all the human ooze, all the people going in the water? For example, the one up in Pi has a very, very, very strong smell, and I've never gone in it.
That's true.
Oh.
Yeah. But again, the human being has always been, during the reign of Yin and Yin, the human being has always been a toxicity delivering tool or system. But if you keep yourself balanced, in other words, you are no longer a toxic delivery system. So the human is in its form where they don't know anything, they're eating all kinds of garbage and whatever, smoking. Alcohol is one that will come out and freaking kill the water. If you drink a lot, you get into something very natural, you're literally killing everything in there because that crap comes out of your energy. And if you pay attention when you drink, your body doesn't really like it. And people who will say, I had a lot of fun, I drank, and boy, the next day my head was killing me. It's their body saying, you gotta stop this crap because you're killing yourself. And what the body is basically, you're killing me. And we were talking about whether, the body as a separate entity from the higher consciousness, the body, at some point, if you abuse it enough, it will literally hate you. And then it will start to fail on you because it feels you have no respect for it by what you're doing to it. So yeah, people will definitely contaminate the water, but if you're containing, because what you're doing when you're containing, you're keeping energetic toxins out of your energy, which means you're going to get into that water and you're going to be a lot cleaner. You're not going to be, dangerous, to the water or dangerous to the wildlife. I mean, they have some pretty interesting stories about, little toxic kids getting into a lake, and one of the water creatures was this huge ass otter, and I forgot where we found that story, where these kids were oozy. When I say oozy, they're toxic. Who knows what they're eating and who knows what kind of conscience they are. But the kids are extremely dense, maybe 10, 11 years old or whatever. And this otter, this huge otter that's, been there for like, they've been there for, obviously longer than humans have been in that area. This big otter comes and attacks his kid, doesn't bite him, he puts him in a bear hug and then tries to drown the kid. So the other kids, fighting to get this huge otter off of the kid, and they finally get him loose and they run home and this otter attacked me, whatever. And they went to the police station, they had like a freaking, a lineup of photos of otters. Did you recognize the otter that attacked you?
And they made a joke out of it.
Yeah, they made a joke out of it, but they literally, it was serious to the point where there are a number of people who have problems because the otters are of Gaia, of nature, and they say you're stinking up my, my home, man. Was that the 10-minute one, or was that the final?
10-minute one.
Okay. Was that good? Lucy?
Yeah. Yes, that was. Thank you very much. I laughed a lot at that otter stories line up.
A little comedy relief here. Okay, from there, we have, a little less than 10 minutes, so we're going to go.
Why did Yin and Yang choose Gaia?
Oh, wow. Let's move to the next one. That takes too long to actually explain that one. Well, we'll explain that one on another forum.
We have explained it a little in past forums.
Yeah, I have explained it a little. Well, maybe you ought to give the link to that forum.
Okay.
Because this one, for newbies, this seemed really, well, probably most things I'm saying right now during the forums, it seemed really bizarre. But
I have this, it's on the 7th Women's Forum.
it's on the 7th Women's Forum, but a quick recap. When we talk about Yin of Yin and the intent of Yin of Yin to literally had a grudge against supreme consciousness. And so that's why I said it's really not the easiest one, because it goes into how he created religions and stories of religions and so-called like myths, like Greek mythology and so on and so forth, where he literally wrote the stories of himself, making himself a victim of Yin of Yin, and things where be afraid of when the Lord comes, or God, which he's talking about supreme consciousness. He'll come and he'll destroy you, so that all of the little minions that he basically mind screwed would be afraid when someone came through that actually was coming through to literally free them from his clutches. So I'm not going to go any further than that. If you want to know more about it, watch that forum.
The story, and later we'll go on to Peter. But if you check out the website, the FAQ will tell you all the questions we've ever had on Ask the Chief, and it'll also tell you some of the topics covered on Women's Forum as well.
Yeah, there's some questions about where did the Yin come from. Those are answered on some of those forums as well, and so on. So we're going to go to whatever we have next.
Are there other beings in the universe experiencing what we experience in this realm?
Well, experiencing currently, they've already experienced what we have been experiencing here.
They want you to clarify.
No, they locked your arm.
Okay.
All right, being stubborn as usual.
I can ask the question.
There we go. No? Well, if you want to ask a question
It
again.
says, how many other beings are experiencing what we're experiencing in this realm and other realms?
There's still, again, because this will, if you hazard to even think it's possible, it screws with this hologram. It makes it weaker.
No.
So when they start blocking for certain questions, they consider it a question that will weaken because the mind is very, very powerful. So when you start to focus your intent somewhere other than where they're telling you to focus, it causes them problems. They can feel that energy that they're feeding starting to diminish. They're getting less. So if you start to entertain something other than what the system says, or the society, or the scientists say is, you start to take from density. It's just even considering it, not just full on believing it, but considering it hurts them. So let's see. So in other words, so that is true. So that is true. There are those who have experienced it, what was going on here. And the majority of the human race on this planet are from those systems that they already trashed and planets they already killed. So the genetics of everyone on this planet are prison genetics. In other words, conquered consciousness, and then they take them and they domesticate them, you would say, and then they set them loose here, they toss them up, and then they go, run and filth everything, make everything toxic. That's what we're talking about, someone getting into a pool and they're oozing their garbage all over the place. That's what, when they created fast foods, there's really no need for fast foods. They created a system where people had to eat on the run. There's no reason for that. It isn't natural. But they talk about commerce and capitalism and all these things. You must have this and so on and so forth. You don't need any of that shit. All it does is builds up stress levels, which means this is more for density to feed on. But, for yourself, you contain and you start to create your own atmosphere around yourself. And you'll find that also the realization that you have more, your energy is a lot stronger in most cases, unless you've been so beat down by them, that you actually can change your experience here. But as you start worrying about whether, cousin Sally or mom or brother Bill, can do what you're doing, that's another way of actually holding you back. You got to basically take care of yourself first. So in the plane, plane, they have that thing where, oxygen levels fall, the masks come down. What do they tell you? As an adult, you have a kid, they say, put the mask on yourself first. Then put the mask on the kid. Can't help anybody if you don't put the mask on yourself first. If you don't balance yourself first, then you can't help anyone. Because you're losing air while you're trying to help them, they're losing air, and eventually you're both broken. So let's see, is that moving from?
Oh, no, that's great.
Okay. Any questions having to do with anything so far? I don't know how many minutes we have left, but
We have 1 minute.
oh, we have 1 minute left. Literally, this is not enough time to get into anything else, except I did want to add with that when they convince you to believe something. So a lot of individuals believe in kundalinis and in chakra points and things like that. And even myself, I was buying into chakra points for years because I was doing my research, and I don't buy whole hog into anything. I just see it as a possibility, and then I do my test. So I think we were doing muscle testing, and we got that chakra points are not real.
No.
They're something that was given to you to make doorways for density to walk through.
No.
So once you get to the point where no chakra points exist, you're not going to die because you don't believe chakra points exist, because you don't believe that chakra points exist. You are a whole energetic being. Chakra points is like compartmentalizing, separating a whole consciousness into pieces. You ever heard the term divide and conquer? Think about that. So anyway, the last alarm went off, and thank you everyone for joining this one.
You
and thank you for the questions. Thank you for asking questions. And thank you. Okay. Everyone have a good one, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, shit.
Oh, sorry, I got to help you up. Okay.
Mm.